All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Clausen Board of Ethics Committee meeting. It is January 22nd at 7 o'clock p.m. Thank you for coming out on this cold evening. It's supposed to get even colder tonight and tomorrow, and I just found out that the schools are closed tomorrow, so that should keep some people busy scrambling for some plans tonight. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Move it.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Yep, and then we're going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we can move on to roll call.
Commissioner Fenton. Commissioner McGinnis.
Here.
Commissioner Newshine.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Traxel.
Okay, so at this time, we do have a quorum, so we can proceed with the meeting. And at this point, we'll move on to public comment.
Regular citizen, Susan Moffett, 726 Strian. I have in the past been a regular critic of this body. My biggest concern was it being used as political fodder. However, the matter brought before you tonight matters. What brought before you tonight are what I think is important for this body to be used for. In the past, citizens have not had an avenue to pursue complaints about the treatment from employees of City Hall. They have come to the council meetings to voice concerns, but unfortunately were only clapped back at. This body is an appropriate non-litigating body for concerns about City Hall employees' conduct to be heard. We all know that City Hall employees are very hardworking, but they aren't perfect, and sometimes there are missteps. Dale Carnegie's guidance on leadership is, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and empathetically. Guidance, he remarks, is all too often ignored by organizations and their leaderships. This body has an opportunity to set aside the legal aspects of the issue, as it is not under their purview to adjudicate legal issues and to examine the conduct and determine if conduct was in accordance with what the citizens of Clausen, tax-paying citizens, should be subject to by the employees of the cities their taxes are paid to.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Honorable members of the City of Clausen Board of Ethics. My name is Lindsay Banis, and I have been a proud resident of Clausen for 14 years. I'm a single woman who has fought to overcome a 2-decade-long battle of debilitating anxiety. I have since lost 50 pounds of weight and have fought to build my self-confidence and no longer accept being taken advantage of by others. I not only speak for myself, but every other resident of Clausen who also is a woman, single, struggles with obesity, self-confidence, and self-love. Today, I stand before you on behalf of this group and all residents of Clausen to voice my concerns regarding a serious breach of ethical conduct and a violation of my civil rights by 3 public officials: Officer Barbara Chambers, Operations Specialist Vincent Smith, and City Manager Joseph Recker. At 4:47 p.m. on November 8th, I was issued a ticket for 2 misdemeanors without proper due process after I had already endured mail fraud, abuse of power, unjust treatment, and denial of governmental services. I stand before the Board of Ethics tonight, not in an attempt to fight the ticket. That legal process will be done in court. I am here to draw attention to the unethical behavior I endured prior to the issuance of the ticket. Officer Barbara Chambers, Operations Specialist Vincent Smith, and City Manager Joseph Recker collectively violated my Michigan constitutional rights, specifically Article 1, Section 17, concerning due process of law and fair treatment in investigations. This section of the Constitution explicitly states, "No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The right of all individuals to fair and just treatment in the course of legislative and executive investigations and hearings shall not be infringed." The unethical behavior began when I received a notice in the mail signed by Vincent Smith saying that water is diverting from my property and onto surrounding properties due to grading, and that an officer will come to my property on October 12th for an inspection. I made sure to be home all day on October 12th, but no officer came to my home for an inspection. I then received a repeat offender notice, also signed by Vincent Smith, that fraudulently stated an officer visited my property on October 12th, but I did not answer, and a follow-up inspection will be conducted on October 19th. If the ordinance violation is not corrected at that time, I will be issued a municipal misdemeanor citation with the added violation of City Ordinances Section 42-1, nuisances. Yet again, I stayed home all day on October 19th, waiting for a code enforcement officer to arrive for an inspection, but no one showed up. After multiple attempts at getting in touch with code enforcement, I finally received a call back from Barbara Chambers on November 1st. Barbara confirmed that she never showed up to my property for an investigation on October 12th or October 19th, and she was unaware of what needed to be done to fix my backyard. She told me it was late, school buses were out on October 19th, and she didn't have time. So she never physically came to my property to make contact with me. She discussed the situation with my neighbors instead. The following day on November 2nd, I received a voicemail from Officer Barbara Chambers. She threatened to issue 2 misdemeanor citations if I did not provide a contractor name and plan of action by November 8th. However, this was after she admitted the day before that she did not know what I needed to fix in my backyard, and that she had not gone to my property on October 12th and October 19th, despite what the notices fraudulently stated. Barbara Chambers advised in her November 2nd voicemail that the Section 42-1 nuisance violation was due to water allegedly diverting from my property to surrounding properties for about a year. This, however, is the first time that I received a notice from the city about it. If this has been a nuisance for about a year, why have I not been informed about it and given an opportunity to correct this issue? In fact, a year ago, December 2023, I had a privacy fence installed. A permit was pulled with the City of Clawson during that time, and City Inspector Brian Vargason performed an inspection and approval of the project in January 2023, including the depth of the fence within the grading of the property. That was the last project I have done to my yard. Since Barbara Chambers never met with me for a proper inspection in my backyard or provided details on what a contractor needs to do to fix any alleged violations, I was forced to independently gather the information that Barbara Chambers never provided. That is when I found a published letter to residents from the Department of Public Works about rear yard drainage issues. The letter states the following important facts regarding rear yard drainage in the city of Clawson. Number 1, most of Clawson sits on heavy clay, which does not let water seep into the ground very well or at all. Number 2, most subdivisions in Clawson were built in the early 1900s, 50s, and 60s. The rear yards were designed at that time to drain across other yards to nearby side streets. Number 3, your backyard is private property, as is your neighbor's backyard. Concerns about flooding from adjoining properties are civil matters and not ones that the city can mediate or be involved. The letter also offers assistance from the city if you have a flooded yard. A DPW and/or engineering representative will meet with you to see if the flooding problem can be rectified and make recommendations on how to fix the problem. I met with Assistant Superintendent Ryan McDonald at the DPW building around 9:20 a.m. on November 7th to seek the assistance offered in the letter. He confirmed that my property is on a natural slope, which would naturally drain across other yards, as stated in the letter to residents regarding rear yard drainage issues. Ryan McDonald also reassured me that the misdemeanor tickets would not be issued on November 8th, and he would speak to the city manager. Ryan McDonald said he would call me to follow up by the end of the day, but I did not receive a phone call from Ryan McDonald. I did, however, receive a phone call from Vincent Smith, operations specialist, at 11:56 a.m. on November 7th, stating that I should not have gone to DPW and all communication should only be made between Barbara Chambers and me. I then went to the City of Clawson building at 425 North Main Street to speak with the city manager, and Vincent Smith told me he is not going to be able to help you. I sent an email entitled, "Please help Clawson resident, 1136 North Selfridge Boulevard," to office manager Joseph Recker, and copied operations specialist Vincent Smith and superintendent Trevor Zablocki the morning of November 8th. My email explained the dishonesty exhibited by Barbara, the fraudulent statements in the notices signed by Vincent Smith, the lack of accountability between departments, the abuse of power and unjust treatment I endured, and my inability to exhaust administrative remedies. I requested the opportunity to meet with the Department of Public Works for an assessment of my backyard prior to the issuance of any tickets. However, that evening at 4:47 p.m., Barbara Chambers issued the 2 misdemeanor tickets. I have not received any reply from the city manager. These incidents have not only caused me personal distress, but also led me to question the integrity of our city's governance. The issuance of the misdemeanors without adequate justification or proper legal procedure suggests a disregard for the fundamental principles of justice and civil liberty that we, as citizens of Clawson and of Michigan, hold dear. It is important to note as well that the city attorney advisory letter to the Board of Ethics regarding my complaints is biased, false, and should be disregarded. Renice Newshai is the advisory attorney for the Board of Ethics, but also the prosecuting attorney against me for the ordinance enforcement ticket issued. This conflict of interest is obvious. Renice Newshai is a competent man and a smart man. He is well aware of this conflict of interest, but he has chosen not to recuse himself. As city attorney, Renice Newshai has taken a public oath for the people of Clawson. He has violated that oath and proven to be dishonorable. Renice Newshai is a contracted employee with the city of Clawson. Having a city employee advising the independent Board of Ethics tarnishes the integrity of the Board of Ethics, and we as citizens of Clawson believe in the Board of Ethics, that you will hold city employees accountable, keep them honorable, and that you will protect us. The reason I'm here today is not only to seek redress for the personal injustice I have faced, but also to uphold the values that our community stands for. Clawson, a little city with a big heart, is a city built on respect, fairness, and the rule of law. It is imperative that every citizen, including myself, has faith in our public officials and the systems that govern us. In light of these events, I respectfully request that the board conduct a prompt, thorough, and transparent investigation into my complaints against Officer Barbara Chambers, Operations Specialist Vincent Smith, and City Manager Joseph Recker. It is crucial that these matters are not only addressed, but also rectified to prevent future occurrences of similar nature. I trust that the Board of Ethics will approach this matter with the seriousness it deserves and uphold the principles of justice and integrity that are the foundation of our great city. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much.
And I also have a letter so the packet, I believe, was put together for this meeting, which is public, about a week ago.
Yes.
I was only notified of this meeting Wednesday or after 7 p.m.
Okay.
So I put together a reply to Renice's letter, and I'd like to read it on the record, so it is public information, because right now, the public doesn't have access to it.
Okay.
Okay.
That letter should be on the minutes.
Is it
if-
going to be
if we
part of
receive
it? Yeah.
It will be public.
The letter will be public, okay. But I still would like to read it, if that's okay. Does anyone need a copy of it?
No, I actually had a chance to. It was sent to all of us today.
Okay,
And so
yes.
that's what I was
I
looking at,
originally,
so-
okay, perfect. I'll read it as well. Does anyone, I printed out copies for everyone.
But the way it works, it would be perhaps better if the gentlelady did read it, since we wanted to be a part of the minutes,
Yeah.
a part of the record. So if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Thank you. Okay. I will read it and then, okay.
If I may, obviously, we're still in public comment, I presume, for purposes of this inquiry. This body would entertain the notion. I don't want to make that decision for you, obviously.
Yes, yeah. We're still in public comment, but you can go ahead and read it at
Thank
this
you.
time.
So this is in response to City Attorney Renice Newshy's analysis of ethics complaints. Dear members of the City of Clawson Board of Ethics, I am writing in response to the letter submitted by Clawson City Attorney Renice Newshy regarding my filed Board of Ethics complaints against Officer Barbara Chambers, City Manager Joseph Recker, and Operations Specialist Vincent Smith. I have several concerns with the conclusions drawn in his analysis, as some are biased and false. Concerns over objectivity. Renice Newshy is the prosecuting attorney against me. While I respect the position of the city attorney, I am extremely concerned about the objectivity of Mr. Newshy's letter. Mr. Newshy is the prosecuting attorney for the 2 misdemeanor cases against me that are now in court because of the abuse of power and violation of my due process rights detailed in the complaints I submitted. As a result, Renice Newshy is partial and unable to render an unbiased opinion or suggestion. He needs to recuse himself because of this obvious conflict of interest. Given these concerns, I respectfully request that the Board of Ethics maintains an independent review of my complaints to ensure a fair and unbiased examination of the facts. The responsibility of the Board of Ethics to protect Clawson residents. The Board of Ethics is put into place to protect the residents of the City of Clawson. As City Attorney, Renice Newshy is an employee of the City of Clawson, so the Board of Ethics must also govern his actions. We cannot allow an employee of this home rule corporation to manipulate our sovereign, independent governing body that our residents rely on. Concerns over law and argument. City of Clawson violated my constitutional rights. While I agree with Mr. Newshy that Clawson is given power for ordinance enforcement from the state of Michigan, that power is subject to the Constitution and law. In this scenario, my constitutional rights were violated. Each city and village shall have the power to adopt resolutions and ordinances relating to its municipal concerns, property, and government, subject to the Constitution and law. And that's the Michigan Constitution, Article 7, Section 22. I detailed the abuse of power and disallowing my due process civil rights in the Board of Ethics complaints filed against Officer Barbara Chambers, City Manager Joseph Recker, and Operations Specialist Vincent Smith. These public officials collectively violated my Michigan constitutional rights, specifically Article 1, Section 17, concerning due process of law and fair treatment in investigations. This section of the Constitution explicitly states, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The right of all individuals, firms, corporations, and voluntary associations to fair and just treatment in the course of legislative and executive investigations and hearings shall not be infringed. The Board of Ethics as an independent body. City of Clawson public officials have a duty to the Michigan State Constitution to be ethical and honorable to the citizens of Clawson. Those duties were breached when my constitutional rights were violated. The Board of Ethics is the remedy to safeguard the citizens that live within the City of Clawson of unethical abuse of practices. My complaints clearly identify unethical behaviors that were exhibited or performed by each of the public officials and has to be addressed. The code enforcement ticket was derived as a result of their unethical behavior. As the prosecuting attorney for the code enforcement ticket, Renice Nushai attempted to persuade the Board of Ethics to ignore this unethical behavior by comparing the responsibilities of the independent Board of Ethics to the legal responsibilities of a municipality to the state of Michigan. And that's in pages 4 to 5 of his letter, Mrs. Lindsay Banis Ethics Complaints Letter. A local ordinance must be consistent with state law and may not conflict with or be preempted by a state law. And that's from the Handbook for Municipal Officials, Chapter 7, Section 2. The City of Clawson Board of Ethics is an independent body which shall issue written opinions regarding ethical, not legal, questions. That's from Clawson, Michigan Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 2, Article 7, Division 1, Section 2-311G. Comparing the legal municipality requirements to the state of Michigan to responsibilities of an independent Board of Ethics is comparing apples to oranges. As an attorney, Mr. Nushai knows these are two separate things, but is presenting this ultra-biased opinion to persuade the Board of Ethics that rely on his legal advice. An ethical opinion of the Board of Ethics is permitted and has nothing to do with the pending civil matter in the court of law. Mr. Nushai also stated in page 5 of his letter that giving interpretation to the Clawson Ethics Code would force the city to have its ethics ordinance be in direct violation of the power given to it above insofar as code enforcement and prosecutions are concerned. This statement is false. The power given to the Board of Ethics is not given by a code enforcement officer or a prosecuting attorney. The power given to the Board of Ethics is granted from the residents of Clawson, Michigan. The tax-paying residents vote for mayor and city council. The mayor and city council then nominate the 5 Board of Ethics members, with each member seated on the board by a majority vote. And that's Clawson, Michigan Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 2, Article 7, Division 1, Section 2-311GB. Giving an interpretation to the Clawson Ethics Code to complaints submitted by a tax-paying resident of the city of Clawson does not violate anything. It honors the objective of the Board of Ethics, which is to issue written opinions regarding ethical, not legal, questions, and to engage in activities that will promote ethical behavior. And that's Clawson, Michigan Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 2, Article 7, Division 1, Section 2-311G. Mr. Nushai continues on page 5 by stating, if any individual could forestall their prosecution by the city by way of an ethics complaint toward the person charged with carrying out the prosecution, our ethics ordinance would be in direct conflict with the authority given the city by the Constitution and the Home Rules Cities Act. This statement is also false. The person charged with carrying out the prosecution is Renice Nushai himself, the prosecuting attorney, not any of the subject public officials submitted in my Board of Ethics complaints. Also, an opinion by the Board of Ethics is not a legal opinion, rather an ethical opinion. And the complaints submitted only pertain to the sequence of events leading up to the issuance of the ticket, not of the ticket itself. I sought out assistance from Code Enforcement, Department of Public Works, and the city manager to resolve this issue before a ticket was issued. And I was met with discrimination, denying access to government services that I pay for as a tax-paying resident, and disallowing my due process rights. Mr. Nushai states in page 5 of his Mrs. Lindsay Banis Ethics Complaints letter that tickets are written when letters, personal visits, and warnings have been disregarded. I did not disregard any communication from the city of Clawson. As detailed in my complaint submitted to the Board of Ethics, I sought resolution with code enforcement, Department of Public Works, and the city manager before the ticket was issued, but I was met with unethical behavior, abuse of power, and fraud. I never received a personal visit from Officer Barbara Chambers, as fraudulently stated in letters mailed to me. I never received a backyard assessment as promised to Clawson residents in the letter published by Department of Public Works. In fact, I was reprimanded by Operations Specialist Vincent Smith for even talking with the Department of Public Works. I was treated like a criminal before a ticket was even issued. After repeated attempts at communication, the only time I was even able to have a discussion with Officer Barbara Chambers was over the phone 1 week before the issuance of the ticket. I never even saw her in person. Governmental immunity. As an independent ethics board, providing an ethical, not legal opinion of the unethical behavior of public officials prior to the issuance of a ticket is not at all divesting the court of its jurisdiction or violating governmental immunity laws. The case in court, of which I am now a defendant, pertains to building code violation, section 304.7, 5.24, grades, elevation differentials, and section 42-2, illustrative enumeration nuisance. Renice Nushai is the prosecuting attorney. I am the defendant. Barbara Chambers, Joseph Recker, and Vincent Smith are not involved and they are able to perform their duties to the citizens of Clawson, Michigan. This will not change with an opinion from the Board of Ethics. What will change is an opportunity for my voice, a proud tax-paying Clawson resident of 14 years, to finally be heard. Concerns over accuracy. The alleged facts in Mr. Nushai's letter are not supported with an affidavit and are not true. I pulled permits for every required project at my home. The most recent project was a fence installed in December 2022 and approved by the City of Clawson in January 2023, and that's Exhibit 1, approved fence building permit. Exhibit 2, approved fence inspection. To approve the building permit includes approval of the depth of the fence posts within the grading of the yard, and that's Exhibit 3, depth requirements of fence building permit. Mr. Nushai said in his alleged facts section that the issue was not corrected and no plan being advanced to do so. What he did not say is there is no grading issue to correct. City of Clawson Inspector Brian Vargason approved the depth of the fence within the grading of my property in January 2023, and Officer Barbara Chambers never detailed the alleged grading work that needed correcting. And that's Exhibit 2, approved fence inspection. Officer Barbara Chambers did not even arrive at my property for an inspection. I have requested Department of Public Works to provide a grading assessment as well. One time in person with Assistant Superintendent Ryan McDonald on November 7th, and 5 times via email with Superintendent Trevor Zablocki. And no one has come to my property for an assessment. And I attached Exhibit 4, emails to Trevor Zablocki to request an assessment of my backyard. I did, however, receive a grading assessment from Manu Sharu, the owner of fully licensed and insured landscape company, Grow Earth, and his website is grow-earth.com. Manu found that the property directly behind my home, 1136 North Selfridge Boulevard, sits visually higher than 1136 North Selfridge Boulevard. Based on our findings, our recommended action is not to adjust grading at 1136 North Selfridge Boulevard, and that's Exhibit 5, Manu Sharu Grading Assessment. Commitment to ethical standards. My intention in filing these complaints was to uphold the high ethical standards we expect from our city officials. It is vital that such matters are addressed promptly with transparency and due diligence. Availability for further discussion. I am willing and available to discuss these matters further with the board, provide additional information, or clarify any aspects of my original complaints. I trust that the City of Clawson Board of Ethics will take my concerns seriously and ensure a thorough and impartial review of my complaints. The integrity of our city's governance and the trust of its residents depend on the fair handling of such issues. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward to your response and the opportunity to work together towards a resolution that upholds the ethical standards of our community. Sincerely, Lindsay Banis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any public comments? Okay, at this time, we'll move on to new business. So the first thing is the approval of the minutes from the September 25th, 2023 Board of Ethics meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from September 25th meeting.
Second.
Okay, we can go ahead and vote.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes.
Commissioner Newshine,
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to the three ethics complaints, the one against Joseph Riker, and then Vincent Smith and Barbara Chambers. So first of all, thank you, Ms. Banis, for everything that you provided this morning. It was very detailed, very thorough, and it was a lot to digest and go through, so I do appreciate the detail on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, are we taking this minutes one at a time?
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense to take them one at a time.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to dismiss the complaint filed against Joseph Raker due to this matter being litigated actively in court right now.
Okay, well, I'll second it so we can move on to discussion.
If I may, I heard a lot tonight and when I read the documents submitted by Ms. Banis about due process a lot. And there is, the definition of due process is our court system. And this matter is in court right now. And everything else is an allegation in my mind. Everything else is an allegation. And until the courts speak, this matter should be resolved in court and not here at any capacity. Because Ms. Chambers and Mr. Raker and Mr. Vincent Smith, everybody could be acting appropriately. We don't know that because the courts have not spoken. And they might just be doing their job. So the court has to decide this, not us.
Just for point of clarification,
Yeah.
my understanding is though the courts are not entertaining anything that has to do with the three people that are being charged with an ethics violation. So if that's the case, our job, I thought, was to protect the citizens of the city by entertaining what Ms. Banis is talking about. I see no reason why we shouldn't proceed tonight.
But this feels like we're interfering with the court's proceeding.
But this-
Because these people, all three of them, are witnesses in the cases. Because one of them issued the ticket, which is Ms. Chambers. The other two, at minimum, they're witnesses if they're called upon by prosecution or the defense. So they're part of the proceeding, no matter what. So, and the issue that I have, if we find any of the respondents in violation or not, it will be used in court, and that's not okay, in my mind. We have to let the courts play out, the litigation play out, because that's due process. The definition of it, actually, as the Constitution requires it. The United States Constitution, not the city of Clawson or the state of Michigan, United States Constitution. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of terms kind of outlined and kind of brought up due process, discrimination, fraud,
False representation.
false representation. I mean,
False statements.
these are all generally would be seen as questions of fact that would have to be determined to be
In a court of
true.
law?
Yeah, I mean, that's my only, it's a, this is, I think, one of the challenging things right now about this board, still in our infancy right now, is that we're still trying to navigate all the ins and outs. and We don't really have an example of one of these yet, But I have a hard time separating out all the determinations that would be legal determinations, which would then go specifically to the conduct, that would be the ethical violation. And us making a determination, my concern is that we're kind of subverting then the position of the court.
I think so.
But
Part of me feels we are combining apples to oranges. I think these are actually two separate things.
Oh,
Well, the civil, is it a civil suit that's being filed against Mrs. Banis?
It's a misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor.
It's a crime. Or in the criminal side.
But as she stated, the three people involved, they're not part of that suit. She's not,
Mr. Nusha, they are part of this by definition, right?
how so?
They are complaining, so the prosecution cannot occur without the three of them. Ms. Chambers, obviously Barb Chambers is the complaining witness, but by definition, so are the other two gentlemen. So the prosecution which deals with the facts, actually, as the gentlelady stated them from beginning to end, I would agree with her wholeheartedly. Those are the facts in this case. And the determination of what the facts are is the very subject of that criminal complaint. And I don't want to make it sound, if I may, so even though we're talking about misdemeanor or crime, it's not like it's a crime of the century or anything like that.
No.
We're talking about code enforcement, but nonetheless, our ordinance does state that you proceed by way of misdemeanor. That's how the code enforcement has opted to proceed here, and that's what the jurisdiction of our district court is. That's what they're going to determine. They're going to determine the facts. I guess, if I may, Chairman
course.
McGinnis, very briefly, I have some of the same concerns about, they've been outlined not just today, but over time with respect to this ordinance. And I think there was opportunities in the past, and there are going to be opportunities in the future to craft a better ethics ordinance that properly handles these very issues. But we can only operate with what we have on the books. And that being the case, I think concerning this, the situation, as far as I'm concerned, for the board is fairly, somewhat simple on account of there is a current ongoing prosecution, and this followed it. It may have been a different calculation altogether, perhaps tougher and more difficult, if the ethics complaint portion had preceded the prosecution. I think the end result will still be the same. The prosecution would take precedence because it must by definition. Nonetheless, I think there would be a little more taxing and analysis as far as this board is concerned. But given the current situation, we'd be usurping the authority of the district court. This board will not be able to do that, certainly not now. This doesn't preclude the gentlelady from filing this complaint the day after the prosecution is done and over with, right? And review all of these complaints. I guess in my mind, and I know, Chairman McGinnis, obviously you're an attorney, I almost think of this particular happenstance, if the board were to vote with respect to each of these complaints, that there is nothing for the board to review at this particular time. That is almost a dismissal without prejudice, in the sense that doesn't preclude the gentlelady from coming back,
Right.
Raising the issues before the board at the end of this. And at that time, all they'll be left will be, beyond whatever, happens in court, whether it goes, one way or the other. Nonetheless, there'll be an opportunity at that point for the board to review this, as opposed to now. Now, this is just, I fear it may be inappropriate for the board. as my opinion stands.
So it's your feeling that if we act on this tonight, we will influence what might happen in the court?
Well, actually, I'll make it even simpler. In my humble opinion, any decision going in any way other than to dismiss this complaint would be void ab initio. The board just does not have the authority. Now, I'm neither judge nor jury. I can't make those stands for it. All I can give you is this legal opinion, you know, and that's all there is to it. But I think it won't be, for example, there's how do we enforce whatever if the board were to find in favor of the complaint filed by Ms. Banas? How do we enforce those? Well, we have an ongoing litigation in district court. Will it come up in district court? Absolutely. Will it make the situation simpler in any way? Absolutely not. The litigation in district court will continue, and the judge that we have in district court, I'm no fortune teller, but I presume will say, well, thank you very much for your opinion. However, litigation will continue forward as it must, right? So I think in my mind, this is at the very least premature, but it certainly is in violation with what's currently happening. In my opinion, the board has no authority to be able to render a decision at this particular point in time.
We as a body are only dealing with the items that violate the code, Clausen Ethics Code, right?
Absolutely.
And that's all we're talking about here.
Absolutely, but think about the factual scenario as to where it begins, right? It begins the moment that a letter or a chambers or somebody from code enforcement goes to the house. And now, of course, I would have recommended to anyone making any statements in here that is currently litigating them in court not to make any statements, but if we're having this conversation, the moment that we begin our prosecution, what do we begin with? The first person that I sit down will be Barb Chambers. She will be sworn, right, by the judge, by the court, and then I'm going to ask a series of questions. And after I get to, where do you work, what do you do for a living, the first question will be, are you familiar with such and such address? Yes. Did you go to this address? Yes, right? Which is coincidentally the very moment where the beginning of this complaint is found. And that's why I think that it is inappropriate for this board, because we're dealing with the same factual scenario.
So you feel it's inappropriate at this time, but you would say
Oh, after the fact, absolutely.
if she wants to pursue this again?
Nobody can preclude her.
Okay.
Nobody can preclude her.
Yeah, and for my kind of digging into it, that was kind of where I was falling in line a little bit more, was just, again, the determinations we'd have to make right now and the decisions we'd have to make right now are in large part, I would imagine, the direct subject of either litigation or the defense, the prosecution or the defense. And so they're going to be putting on a case, defending a case. That being said, I don't see any reason why this matter could not be brought after the fact. Not that I'm seeking to delay things or anything like that. It gets really tricky sometimes when we're trying to deal with, are we interfering with the judicial process or the legal process? And if in doing so, then again renders it void or has an influence on it either way. I mean, and everything else aside, I mean, Ms. Manson, I mean, you're very well prepared tonight. I mean, incredibly well prepared tonight, and in addressing all the points. And it's something that I think the board would probably like to be able to address and take on. It's just, I think my concern is the same thing, which is that it's just premature at this time.
So do you intend on delaying it instead of me having to?
Well, what we would do is
refile it?
essentially what would happen is it would be, again, like the legal term would be a dismissal without prejudice. So it would just be meaning that at this time, it's filed, we don't know when it is, we would dismiss it.
Why can't you just delay it instead of making her refile? Why does she have to go through the whole process again? Can't they just vote to delay this issue until after the legal proceedings are done?
No, ma'am. And I would ask you to make a determination now. Believe it or not, it will be cleaner for purposes of the proceedings in court, not to have something like this over both the general lady as well as the city of Clawson. That said, the board can do as it pleases,
Sure.
and you've heard my thought on the matter, that any determination that you would make to the contrary would be void ab initio. But that said, I think, I think a vote is appropriate in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think
Particularly
sitting-
because there's, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. McGinnis, particularly because there's a motion on the floor already.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's,
I object. I believe you're all being biased in this consideration. And Mr. Nushai, why have you not recused yourself from this matter?
Mr. Chair,
cannot-
let's not engage in the
Now we're
conversation back and forth,
We're in
Mr.
a
Chair.
conversation between the board members, Mr. McGinnis.
yeah, I mean, at this point, and again, this is part of the procedure that's set up right now that we've tried to work out with the Board of Ethics, which is complaint filed, you have an opportunity to speak, but we don't, there's nothing set up in the board or really our procedures to allow kind of cross back as if it's a full kind of either litigation that's occurring right now or kind of cross back. That's something that we've discussed as a board in the past, trying to clarify as to our policies and our procedures. And I think we've talked about workshops before and what we could present back to the Clawson City Council to try to define things. But right now, it's not set up as an open forum for really a back and forth. You're allowed to present, we can ask some follow-up questions, but it's not, we're not really designated with the authority to then call witnesses ourselves or proceed in that type of normal legal or kind of judicial matter.
Yeah, this is ethical, definitely not legal.
Sure, but determining whether due process has been violated.
An investigation as well. The Michigan Constitution refers to due process in investigations, it's not just due process in law. And in this case, it was an investigation prior to the issuance of the ticket, of which Barbara Chambers issued the ticket. Bernice Nushai is the prosecuting attorney. Joseph Rucker has nothing to do with this, except for just ignoring my email prior to getting the ticket issued. And Vincent Smith as well did not issue the ticket. Vincent Smith is only my complaint against him. That's how he's looped into this. That's it.
Mr. McGinnis, there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, at this stage, there is a motion on the floor, so we will go ahead and put it to vote.
Please.
What is the motion?
Motion to dismiss.
Commissioner Nushai?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
No.
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to dismiss the complaint filed against Mr. Vincent Smith due to the litigation that's pending for this matter.
Okay, I'll second. We can open this up for discussion. It's the same kind of discussion
Yeah.
as before.
By the way, I have only one comment.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith is, Joe Raker is the manager, so he's de facto, he's the city manager. Everybody works for him in this town, so he is part of the litigation. He will be part of the litigation. It cannot be otherwise, in my opinion, but nonetheless.
At this stage too, I mean, I guess I'm not a complete mind reader to know every single person that'll be part of the litigation, nor every claim brought, nor every defense raised at
These
that
are
time.
all absolute allegations, and they have to be litigated in court. One of the reasons why we love this country, due process, court systems.
We'll put it to vote.
Commissioner Quinn?
No.
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nushai?
Yes. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to dismiss the complaint filed against Ms. Barbara Chambers due to this case being litigated in court.
I'll second. Same thing, so we'll just put it to vote.
Yeah.
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nushai?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
No.
Okay, now that we've moved on for those, at this point, we'll move on to the commissioners' comments. Again, I would just say at this point, we've discussed before, and I think I still think there'd be, separate from just this, it would be fruitful as, again, a board to figure out and to help still work through and establish better policies or procedures, a better procedure for moving forward. We've worked on some documents, we've worked on some information like that. We've discussed before potentially doing a workshop or, being able to open up to public comment to improve kind of what we do here. And because that was, again, we're trying to find our way through each case that kind of happens. Is this something that the board would be interested in, or?
Absolutely.
I don't know if this is something I need to make him, if this is
Mr.
really
McGinnis,
more.
I don't know if you'll assist you, if you please.
Yeah.
This, City Council did approve a standing committee, which is an ordinance review committee recently. It met 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And it'll meet again tomorrow. And basically, it was the impetus for that, as you would undoubtedly know, is the new charter. But it's also an opportunity to have a larger review of all our ordinances. And of course, it's my opinion, as well as the opinion of many, that this particular ordinance will require a review.
Yeah.
And I think there was obviously, certainly from the Ordinance Review Committee, there was a lot of, I think everybody would agree with that notion. And then, of course, it would be whatever, when the time comes and the review occurs, whatever that ordinance committee would come up with will be presented to the Clawson City Council for their debate, conversation, and consideration. And this, a situation like the one presented this evening does go to the very consideration that that you're about to have and engage. I would request that you hold such workshop or whatever it may be in abeyance for the time being, to allow both the committee and, of course, the city council to take action, because I think
Sure.
that would be appropriate. And then, once that occurs, then I think it would certainly make a lot of sense for this body to be able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, if we have an ordinance review committee that's designated to that right now, it seems like that's really the proper process, or the proper step.
Should we designate somebody from this board maybe to attend your meetings, or?
Well, they're open to the public. Anybody can attend. We'd love to. It felt rather lonely last time that we were there, so we would take all the participation that you can. There's no order designated necessarily through and through. It's other than that the committee has decided to meet every other Tuesday. Tomorrow being one of those Tuesdays. Tomorrow, the conversation will be around the, Michelle, remind me, is the special events. Pardon, thank you.
So you do have an agenda for every?
For tomorrow, we do nothing outlined as far as ongoing, but we will have an agenda for each meeting ahead of time. Tomorrow's special events, I think it'll be important conversation. I think after that, a general consensus within the committee was to talk about contracts, or maybe that's just my wish, more so than the committee, because that's been affected by the new charter considerably. But that said, the ethics ordinance is going to be a critical item, and I think it will be all hands on deck. I think everybody's opinion will be important, particularly this body's.
Thank you, Mr. Nushai. So it's the meeting's tomorrow evening?
Yes, 6 o'clock.
The only other kind of comment I would make towards any of this is that, again, I think, as we volunteer and do this, we do take this seriously. The notion when matters come up and we're looking at, again, a situation where we might be either stepping or overstepping in bounds now, when there still is a remedy, I always err on the side of caution with that. And I would hope that that either as we have more clarification going forward with our committee, or as Kevin moves to the future, we are able to address some of these even a little bit more, in a little bit more depth. But this was a unique one because this is the first time we had something come before us where there was pending litigation going on. And so, just like with kind of anything, in the judicial process or the legal world, dismissal without prejudice is essentially the way of just clearing the docket so something's not floating on there until it's ripe. So it's I don't think we haven't made any decisions as to the merits specifically. We weren't able to we did not entertain those this evening. Instead, it was, again, looking towards whether or not we were potentially overstepping our scope at this time.
So in order to revisit this, what do I have to do?
You've already have everything essentially prepared.
Right, so I have to resubmit though?
Yeah,
Okay, the formal process again?
Right.
With all my documentation that I've already provided?
I don't know, you submitted a lot via email and electronic mail and a lot signed, and we accepted the documents that way. I don't know.
I mailed everything.
You mailed, okay.
Except for the documents that I submitted this weekend, because I was only notified of this meeting
Right.
on Wednesday at 7.
Right. Other than that, unless there was additional, again, procedural clarification on this, I don't know of any other way to really handle it procedurally. It's just generally, if somebody's there, again, essentially dismissing it without prejudice and then allowing it to be refiled is the normal course of action. Otherwise, again, it's still, it's pending at the time prior to adjudication.
May I comment?
Absolutely, I think I've talked
I
about
think
it.
Ms. Manis has brought to our attention some genuinely, things that she had a problem with, and I appreciate that. I'm sorry that we couldn't address it today. I would encourage you, if you still feel so inclined, to bring it back and give us a chance to go through it. Whether we find them guilty or not guilty, it would be nice to go through the process. But I understand what you're saying. So thank you.
Almost, thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
Second?
We can take it to vote, unless there's a discussion about this.
Commissioner Nushai?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
Yes.
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I appreciate it.